Hey guys, Chris here. We have a story from one of our viewers who goes on a canoe trip with a friend in Minnesota. They go camping, they spend the night, and that night something is moving continuously around their campsite and around the island. And it's extremely frightening for them. That's next. Okay, so I'm trying to find a spot along the river here that's kind of concealed because I am in a park. Fortunately for me, it's about 50 degrees out. The temperature's going to drop a little bit when the sun goes down, and that's going to happen really pretty quickly. So I think I found a spot. Okay, so I am along the Carson River here in Nevada. It's like on the border between the Sierra Nevadas and the desert. Carson City's like right there. It's an interesting landscape. When it's snowing like crazy up there, sometimes it can be nice out in the desert. It's pretty cool to have that option. Also, I'm finding skip stones that skip on the water here. Let me try one. Woo! One big skip. And today's beer is Founders All Day IPA Session Ale. It's got a Jeep Cherokee with a canoe on it, which is very appropriate for our story today. So, whoa! I don't know if the all day means breakfast as well, so it could be. Oh boy, it's nice and golden. It's a lower end beer for sure. Founders, let's give it a little taste test here. It's not a bad beer, but it's definitely a lower end beer. It's got good color to it and a decent aftertaste. So, cheers. Okay, so in August of 2001, Dave from Minnesota, he's one of our viewers, and I talked to him. He wanted to go on a canoe trip with his good friend Brian that August. They wanted to go to the St. Croix River, go to the upper part of the river, and camp on some islands. The St. Croix River is a tributary of the Mississippi River. It's 169 miles long, and the lower 124 miles of it form the border between Minnesota and Wisconsin. And in 1968, it was designated a National Wild and Scenic Riverway, and it's some of the more remote and wild and undeveloped country in the upper Midwest. Great canoeing river, and in fact, I grew up in Minnesota, and as a family, well, I was a kid growing up, we would go camping along the St. Croix River. We would go to Taylor's Falls and go to Interstate Park, which is a state park that would border both Minnesota and Wisconsin with the river right in the middle, hence Interstate Park. And beautiful gorge that was there, and a steamboat would go through it for tourists to ride on. And this happened upriver from there. On August 13th, Dave and Brian had their canoe loaded up, cooler, tent, gear, food, and fishing rods, and they launched from the Sandrock Cliffs campground and paddled north up the St. Croix River. It was a beautiful day to be on the river. Brian's in the back paddling, Dave's up front. They got all their gear, they're pretty excited. Go about 2.5, 3 miles, come around this bend, and they find this series of islands that they'd seen previously on a map. They pick out an island right in the middle, land the canoe. Dave gets out first, Brian gets out, and they go check out this island and figure out where they want to camp. It's heavily wooded, ferns, there's some sandbars on it, and inside the island there's dry areas and there's areas where the river rises up and it recedes and it leaves these pools, marshy areas, driftwood, there's heavy down timber in there. But they find a spot in the northern part of the island that they're pretty happy with. They unload their gear, bring it into their site. They have a 4-man Equinox tent that David just picked up, brand new tent. He was really excited to set that up. Took him about 15 minutes to do that. Got everything kind of organized.
We had to find firewood for our campfire, so there's no driftwood laying around our little island, so we had to canoe around the area to actually load our canoe up with firewood for the evening.
Loaded it right in the middle of the canoe, came back, brought it in, and had a really good collection of firewood for the night. Really important.
Kind of just got the fire going, and we kind of were relaxing a little bit. And then when night hit, it was a pitch black. There's no there's no lights out there or anything, so it was pretty scary kind of in that respect.
They get their campfire going, really enjoying that, and they start talking about fishing the next day. And they realize we really didn't eat much, so let's get some food going. They got the cooler out and they were just about ready to eat. It was getting late. It was after 9 o'clock. And they heard right then in the river towards the east side this loud splash in the river 25-30 feet away. And I asked Dave, what do you mean splash? He said it was like a kerplunk sound, like somebody threw a large rock in the river. They look at each other, not really sure what that was, thinking maybe did a tree branch just fall off? Something natural happened? Okay. Then it happens again, right in the same area. This loud splash, kerplunk sound, like someone or something threw a large rock in the river. And now they've heard it twice. And they're thinking, okay, I don't know what would make a sound like that. It's not a beaver, raccoon, not a bear. And then they heard a third one, and it was on the other side, to their left, opposite side. This loud splashing sound. They were feeling really concerned, borderline frightened, because they couldn't think of what it was. It was loud.
I would say about 10 o'clock at night, about 2 hours after the sunset, we started hearing splashing in the river on both sides around our island. That made me a little panicky to hear that.
They discussed it really quickly. They knew they couldn't leave the island. It was too late. They were stuck there. It was pitch black. Really dangerous to get in your canoe, start traveling downstream in the mighty St. Croix River. It's a very powerful current, and it's a very large river. And to do that at night is just really ill-advised, to say the least. They're looking at their firewood, realizing that we may have to stay up for a while, if not maybe all night, if this continues. And it continued. They heard more splashing, this loud kerplunk sound. And then they heard this, sounded like someone was in the river. Like if I was to step off into the river behind me and start walking upstream, if I was powerful enough, you would hear the water moving around my body. They had this sound. That's what they heard. And whatever this was had to be very large, because the St. Croix River is a very, like I said, a very powerful river. And they heard this movement going slowly upstream, upriver, and then it came back down. And Dave said it was almost like whatever it was was positioning itself so it could watch them.
That is the other noise that really scared us. Was it kind of appeared that something was kind of lurking around in the water. Feel like it was kind of trying to look at us from the river.
They felt absolutely frightened by this, horrified that there's something moving around their camp and it's pitch black and they can't leave the island. They had this small camp flashlight. This is 2001. They had no cell phone, and they had this small flashlight. Brian shines it over there where he heard the sound, didn't see anything, but they could still hear the movement. The flashlight was not strong enough. This was not a floodlight, a high-powered LED light. This was just a regular cheap flashlight from like Walmart. Brian had an idea. He had brought some firecrackers with, in case some bears showed up, and he thought, you know what, this is a perfect time, let's get those firecrackers out. He lit the firecrackers, threw them towards the river, not into the river, but towards the river. They went off. A whole pack of firecrackers. Made really loud noise. It's late at night, and you're on the river, and the sound just carries. They thought, that'll at least send a message that, you know, we're kind of dangerous, it's really loud, hopefully it'll scare whatever it is away, we can get back to our camp and enjoy ourselves. And it acted like nothing even happened. The kerplunk and the movement kept going like nothing happened. They managed their fire really well, just fed it just enough to keep it going, but big enough to potentially deter whatever this was and give them a feeling of some security. This went on all night long. Just feeding the fire, staying together, hearing these sounds. They knew they couldn't go to sleep, and they knew they had to get through the night and get to morning and wait for the sun to come up.
We were so scared looking around all night trying to like see what was making these noises. By the time the sun was starting to come up, I think it was about 5 a.m., 6 o'clock, something like that, you can start to see the daylight coming around.
Sure.
That's when we didn't really hear any more noises.
I'm hearing some coyotes. Can you guys hear that? That's quite a pack of coyotes. Wow. They're happy about something. The sun came up. It's after 5. The sound stopped, and they felt some relief. It was starting to get light. 5:30, 5:45 now, and they decided, and they felt comfortable enough to move out of their camp and walk down to the river and start looking around, kind of investigate, see if they could find anything. They're walking on the sandbar, kind of like here. I'm sitting on a sandbar. This is all sand that I'm on. There's some bushes that have grown up and a channel over here that I had to step across. And they found on the beach, this sandy sandbar beach, footprints. Large, human-like footprints. There was also other footprints around on the island. Theirs and maybe someone else's, they couldn't quite tell, but they knew they were moving around the island as well the previous day. But they found in the sand some 17, 18-inch long human-like footprints.
It's kind of like it had a heel and kind of like the normal human footprint where it has the upper part of the foot, and then I could see the toe marks where it had its little toes and a giant big toe, and they were double my foot easily, like and I'm a size 10 shoe, and whatever this was double the size, and my friend's foot is bigger than mine, and his could fit right in it with ease, and it was a couple inches longer than my friend's foot track, and his is much bigger.
Then they went inland in the island, start looking around, and they found in the island, in this kind of a muddy area, kind of a lower depression, thick brush, but there was this muddy black mud area, and they found these 4 to 5 inch long footprints. Human footprints.
I looked on the island and saw small tracks that were like the size of like maybe like a 6-year-old or like an 8-year-old, barefoot tracks. Saw weird tracks on this island for sure. And then the small ones really threw me off because they were pressed like about a half inch or more pressed into this mud. And this mud was nasty. It had like oil slicks in it and like weird river slime. It wasn't an area where your little child would want to be walking.
They found these tracks all around their camp, outside of their camp, and around the island. Dave said he's not a tracker. They didn't find a clear path of tracks. They were kind of mixed up, and then they would lose them, find a few more. They came to this other sandbar, lower end of the island, and they found something really interesting. They found these clamshells, and they were like open, like this. And whatever was inside of it was cleaned out, almost like sucked out. And Dave said there was this neat pile of these clamshells piled up on the bank of the river. Like something ate them, ate whatever's inside of it and stacked them up nice and neat. Also, next to it, he said there was this imprint in the sand, like someone or something had been squatting or crouching down while doing this task of going through these clamshells. They found 2 other piles like this on this island. One of them was inland, nice little stack, kind of in the brush, of these clamshells that were cleared out. Dave was like, this is really freaky. I'm glad it's daytime, and I'm glad we got through the night, but we are obviously in some kind of a territory where there's potentially a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch with a small child, adolescent, or whatever you would want to call it, an offspring, and we're possibly in their home, so to speak. And maybe that's why they made this movement and sounds all night long. Dave told Brian, you know, we came here to camp, we came here to fish. Before we leave, because I think we need to leave, I would like to do just a little fishing off the end of the island and just kind of take a break, kind of take a mental break from all this, and then I think we need to just get out of here. He went over to the edge of the island, started casting, doing a little fishing, and right after about 5 or 6 minutes, he heard Brian say something. He couldn't remember what it was, and then he felt this movement in the ground, like this shaking and this crashing in the forest on the island in front of them. Not 50 feet away was this island. There was a channel separating their island from this other island. This other island was lifted up a little bit, 4 or 5 feet, and there was something crashing through the forest right then. And they could hear this loud pounding sound as it crashed through the forest towards them. They were absolutely horrified. Brian came running back over to Brian.
And with this charging sound, what I mean is, have you ever seen a King Kong movie where he's slamming his fists on the ground? That's what the noise sounded exactly like. And he looked over, and I froze. I dropped my fishing pole. He looked at me, and his face turned white like a bedsheet. I thought he was going to pass out.
And Brian was taller, and he was looking up towards the other island, and Dave turned around, and he couldn't quite see it, but Brian said later that he saw brush moving and the trees shaking as this crashing sound came through the forest towards them. And he said they could feel the vibration through the ground, through their feet and up into their chest. Whatever this was massive. And they looked at each other, and Dave said, "We need to leave now."
When we heard the pounding, charging noise on our opposing island, we fled for our lives.
And they turn and they start grabbing their gear, and Brian runs it over to the beach, throws the sleeping bag and the cooler next to the canoe, and he comes back. Dave is dropping the tent, and Brian says, "Just leave the tent." And Dave says, "No, I just got this tent, I want to keep it." And so he took the poles out of the sleeves and just opened it up and just dropped it, pushed it down and just rolled it up, grabbed the sleeping bag and ran out to the beach where the canoe was, threw it right in the middle, stepped into the water, jumped into the front, and then Brian was in the back and he launched off, and they could hear this thing still pounding in the trees behind them, and then it stopped, and then they pushed out into the current, and the current carried them downstream.
I was panicked still when we got to the boat, the landing. I went into the park office and asked her if there's any other animals out here but bears, or if there's bear around, and she said, "Yeah, oh yeah, there's bears and deer and, you know, your normal run-of-the-mill wildlife." And they had plaster castings of different animal tracks hanging up, and they had a bear print up there, and it's just nothing. These tracks were not bear, or they were not raccoons or anything that I know.
Dave says he now tends to camp in campgrounds. He doesn't solo backpack anymore, doesn't camp on islands, hasn't canoe camped since that time. He was happy to find my channel as a place that for just average people going out and doing things that can bring their stories and have other people hear them. He was really grateful for that. And it was really good talking to Dave from Minnesota. I could totally relate to his accent and to everything else. So thank you, Dave. I really appreciate your story and you sending that in. So, and we are in absolute darkness now on the river, and fortunately for me, I have not heard any loud movement in the river or anything else in the forest. I still got to hike out of here tonight through this forest and then through this giant like floodplain to my vehicle, so I better get off and doing that. So thank you for watching my channel. As always, if you guys like stories about the strange, unexplained, and things that go bump in the night, you always know what to do. Like and subscribe. That always helps me out, helps out the algorithm and all that fun stuff. And I guess we will see you on the next one. I kind of wouldn't mind spending the night here, but I don't have a tent or food or anything. I just have the leftovers of my warm beer now. So, all right, thank you guys, and we will see you in the next one. As always, keep hiking.